Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, the boxing gods have looked down upon us on this fine Saturday evening and they have blessed us with a stupendous gift. He has granted us mercy and he has eradicated Lawrence Okolie and his WBO reign of terror in the Cruiserweight division. Chris Billam Smith defeats Lawrence Okolie by a 12-round majority decision, which should have been a unanimous decision. Well, quite frankly, it should have been a DQ for Lawrence Okolie, but regardless, I could care less. I'm glad Lawrence Okolie lost this fight. Once again, his conduct in this fight was nothing short of disgraceful. Cheating every single round, not an exaggeration. The usual, holding, mauling. I mean, this guy sometimes never even led with a jab or a straight right hand. Many times he was just leading with a clinch. He would kind of lean in, look like he was going to throw a jab, and then he'd lean in and hug Chris Billam Smith. He was leading with clinches, unbelievable. And when he was clinching, then he was hitting behind the head, etc. He was leading with forearms. All the dirty shit you can imagine, man. Punching in the back, punching, just a disgraceful performance by Lawrence Okolie once again. Not the first time we've said it, but tonight it was a reason, or one of the reasons, behind his undoing. Now, don't get it twisted, this was a pretty shit fight. As I said, it was the typical Lawrence Okolie fight, but Chris Billam Smith was having success despite the holding of Lawrence Okolie. He was able to find a home for his left hook intermittently throughout this fight, and every time Chris Billam Smith landed that shot flush, it seemed like it bothered Lawrence Okolie. But regardless, the first 3 rounds of this fight were the typical Lawrence Okolie fight. When he threw punches from range, the jab, the straight right hand, he was landing some good shots on Chris Billam Smith. Sometimes Chris Billam Smith would block those shots with his gloves, but Okolie, despite all of the holding, he was landing the better shots in the first 3 rounds of this fight. Sometimes Chris Billam Smith would land a counter jab as Okolie would fall in, a short little chopping left hook, things of that nature, but nothing too consequential. First 3 rounds it was messy as hell, but Okolie was landing the better shots, and it was looking like it was going to develop into the average Lawrence Okolie fight. However, things took a turn in round 4. Chris Billam Smith timed Lawrence Okolie with a left hook, bang on the chin. Lawrence Okolie kind of turned himself, and he was kind of square. Chris Billam Smith then he kind of counters with a left hook, bang on the chin. Okolie goes down, and Okolie was hurt for the rest of the round, basically. He was kind of on unsteady legs, he was holding, he was mauling. Chris Billam Smith landed a few more shots here and there, but Okolie negated those attacks by, like I say, by holding and by spoiling. But he was hurt in round 4, there's no doubt about it. And even at the start of round 5, to me, Lawrence Okolie, he never looked like he had his feet back. And, immediately in round 5, he went for the clinch. And the referee finally had enough, deducted a point from Lawrence Okolie in round 5. Plus, Chris Billam Smith won that round anyway. He was the only guy really forcing the action. He was the guy who landed the few shots that were landed. So at this point in time, despite Okolie's decent start in the first 3 rounds, Chris Billam Smith had scored 2 10-8 rounds in a row, in my opinion. And yeah, really, the fight turned from that point in time. Round 6, again, messy. Really, really messy. Okolie just taking what he could get, He would kind of lead with his left hand, as in he'd hold his left hand out constantly, which is illegal. He would try to measure Chris Billam Smith to throw the right hands. And sometimes he was catching Chris Billam Smith with that shot. And he was catching Chris Billam Smith with big right hands throughout this fight on occasion, but to be fair to Chris Billam Smith, he took those shots really well. He was never seriously hurt in this fight. There was a couple of moments where I felt, yeah, maybe Chris Billam Smith felt that shot, but he never looked like he was seriously hurt to me. But regardless, round 7, Lawrence Okolie gets another point deducted for holding. And after this point deduction, Lawrence Okolie comes out and really tries to put it on Chris Billam Smith. He was basically spamming the 1-2 on the front foot. And when Okolie did that, he was actually having success. It looked like he was overwhelming Chris Billam Smith a little bit when he was actually, you know, throwing punches, which is the objective of boxing. It looked like Chris Billam Smith was getting a bit uncomfortable, and I wondered whether that had kind of lit a fire under Okolie's arse, but no, it never did. Rounds 8 and 9, once again, messy. More mauling from Lawrence Okolie. Arguably, he landed the better shots in those rounds when he did throw punches. But again, typical Okolie rounds. I don't really feel the need to describe them any further. And in rounds 10 and 11, Lawrence Okolie was dropped twice. Now, the first knockdown in round 10, I don't think anything landed. I actually don't think it was a knockdown, to be honest. You know, Chris Billam Smith landed a few punches. Sorry, he threw a few punches, sort of cuffing type of short arm punches. Okolie then kind of tumbles to the canvas, and it's called a knockdown. Fair enough. I'm not complaining, by the way. I mean, Lawrence Okolie should have had more points deducted. Again, should have been disqualified, so no sympathy on my part. Round 11, another knockdown. It looked like Lawrence Okolie kind of just came in square, just kind of walked in, and Chris Billam Smith kind of threw some, again, short arm punches, a few barrage of punches, and Okolie drops to his knees. The commentary team was saying that even the second knockdown looked dubious, but I never really called it like that. I never saw a replay, so it's hard to tell in regards to the third knockdown. But it was called a knockdown, and yeah, at this point in time, I felt there was no way Lawrence Okolie could win this fight without a stoppage. And after the third knockdown, much like after the second point deduction, Lawrence Okolie comes out swinging, actually lands some really good shots on Chris Billam Smith. Again, Billam Smith looking a bit uncomfortable when Lawrence Okolie was teeing off, but he gets through it, gets through the rounds, and he eventually sees out round 12 and ends the fight. And yeah, Chris Billam Smith won the fight in the end by a majority decision. Now, I don't know, given the point deductions, given the knockdowns, I've got no idea how you could score this fight 112. No idea whatsoever. No idea whatsoever. And listen, this fight was shit, right? It was a shit fight. Terrible scorecard. I felt the referee did a really bad job of officiating this fight. I've seen people on Twitter say, oh, the ref did a great job, you know, deducting points from Lawrence Okolie. No, the guy should have been DQ'd, to be honest. Should have been DQ'd. So no, he didn't do a good job. He was doing the absolute bare minimum, and I mean bare minimum, in regards to officiating the fouling of Lawrence Okolie. He did the bare minimum, if that. And that was enough for Lawrence Okolie to lose this fight. And thank God for that. Once again, I will say, I try not to be too harsh. I try not to be hyperbolic and whatnot. But Lawrence Okolie, his style is just a cancer. It's an eyesore. It's terrible for boxing. The guy does nothing for the sport whatsoever. I don't care about effectiveness and things of that nature. Oh, but he's really effective. He's strong. He's this. He's that. He's the other. Nah, he's terrible for boxing. He fought like a complete pussy tonight. Chris Billam Smith was there to fight, but, you know, he did what he could do. Chris Billam Smith wasn't particularly impressive, but what can you do when you're being hugged for 12 rounds, right? He did what he could do, landed some good shots, mainly with his left hand, good left hooks, etc. A few good jabs here and there, and he did enough to win this fight. But yeah, Lawrence Okolie, never want to see him again. I hope this guy retires. Maybe try to pursue a rap career. He should do something else, man, because boxing is just not for him, and watching his fights is not for me. Boxing is a spectator sport, and nobody likes watching Lawrence Okolie. Ben Shalom, in his wisdom, made a huge mistake in signing Lawrence Okolie. Eddie Hearn's done a good job of getting rid of him. And yeah, I never want to see this guy fight again. Never want to see this guy fight again. I hope this guy retires, but obviously he's not going to. What I think you'll see is Lawrence Okolie will move up to the heavyweight division. I think that's what's going to happen now. We'll see how he gets on there. Maybe at heavyweight he's not going to be able to hold quite as much because he's not going to be as strong, and he's not going to have a height and reach advantage over as many opponents as he's had previously. So maybe that may make his fights more watchable, but even if Lawrence Okolie goes to heavyweight, man, he's toast. He's done. I'm glad as well. I'm glad we don't have to suffer this guy's title reign. An absolute bore to watch. It's not even boring. Lawrence Okolie's not even boring. He's repugnant. His style is repugnant. Completely and utterly disgusting. So I'm glad he's lost. I'm really glad he's lost. Especially considering as well, if you're a hardcore boxing fan, I'm sure you're quite fond of the cruiserweight division. That division in the last 15-20 years has delivered some unbelievable fights. Unbelievable fights, from Lebedev versus Guillermo Jones to Gassiev versus Junior Dorticos, David Hay versus Jean-Marc Mormec. You know, there were some great Thomas Adamek fights, some great Marco Huck fights. The cruiserweight division, I mean, Jay Opataya versus Neris Briadis, for example, another great fight. Usyk versus Briadis. When you look at, like, what divisions have delivered the best fights in the last 20 years, the cruiserweight division is right up there. And Lawrence Okolie has been a stain on that division for far too long. So, fuck that guy. Glad he lost. Congrats to Chris Billam Smith. I don't want to hear people call this guy a weak world champion, regardless if it's true. Ultimately, Chris Billam Smith has performed a really valuable service to us boxing fans in getting rid of Lawrence Okolie. Quite frankly, if I was running the Hall of Fame, the International Boxing Hall of Fame, I would induct Chris Billam Smith tomorrow for services to boxing. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Fuck Lawrence Okolie. Congrats to Chris Billam Smith. Peace.